Hey y'all, it's Shayna here, and I know I've been making a lot of update videos recently, but as I've said in many videos, I've been grieving a lot about my ex and ending that 2-year relationship, especially with the recent events of him reaching out to me after having blocked me on everything because he wanted a break, and me kind of having to confront him with feeling done with the whole thing. So yeah, I went over that in my last video, but I guess I just wanted to update on the most recent events. I just got back from the beach. I did a bonfire with my friend, and that involved me burning some of the stuff I had related to my ex. I burned a drawing of mine. I was trying to draw him. It was going to be a little surprise, a little birthday present, and he actually wrote some stuff in my sketchbook, and I burned that. I had a little booklet of his that he used to write some poetry because we did the 30-30 challenge together in April, 30 poems in 30 days, stuff like that. And then there were some Polaroids I have of us. So I just thought that I would just briefly talk about some thoughts I had about the bonfire, because I'm seeing my therapist tomorrow, and, I'd like to sort of update her on it, and I think it'd be interesting to talk about my feelings on it while they're still fresh. It was just a very cathartic situation. I mean, not just the actual burning, but the whole night. I picked up my friend, and then we went to Walmart to get the fire ingredients and marshmallows too, so we could make some s'mores. And then we drove to the fire pits and set everything up, and he actually brought his speaker too, so that was really fun because we could listen to music on it. I played some of the stuff I liked, and I burned my stuff. I gave like a pretty long monologue before. I love reprocessing things. I mean, I'm one of those people who can tell the same story over and over again, and I feel like I get something out of it every time, There's always something new to learn. So after I sort of updated my friend and just, was processing the situation at the same time, I threw things into the fire, and I sort of went in order from like things that I'm most attached to things that I'm least attached to. So I started with his poetry notebook, and then the stuff that he wrote in my sketchbook, and then the drawing, and then finally the Polaroid. And it was really hard, honestly. It was, especially with the Polaroid, especially with the drawing too. With the drawing, like, I had considered finishing it, and sending it off to him, or maybe making a copy of it and sending him the original and then just burning the copy. Like, part of me thought maybe I could get closure, just sort of as like a last gesture of affection, I guess. And especially since in our last conversation he was like, "Why do you hate me so much?" Or, "I don't understand why you hate me so much." And I said, "I don't." I guess, I thought that action could be really powerful in expressing that. But, before I left to go pick up my friend, I asked him what he thought I should do, if he thought that was a good idea, or if I should just burn it. And he said that he didn't think I would be getting closure by finishing the drawing, and that I would still be hanging on to it and having to look at it, and looking at him because I'm drawing him, and it wouldn't be effective for me. But ultimately, he said it was my decision, of course. And I just thought, he's probably right. And just intuition told me that it was probably time to let go of that, and that I have plenty of other things that I want to draw. So I never thought that I hated him or anything like that. I would definitely say, though, that I was more of in a state of anger and sadness and stuff, basically associating him with negative things. And I mean, especially focusing on the self-blame, he was an easy avenue to lead to that self-degradation. It was a very easy example to pull up, what we had been through, and using that to say that everything's my fault, that I'm worthless, etc. And I mean, he definitely played a part in reinforcing that. My therapist even brought up last time I saw her that I seem to have this pattern of attaching myself to people who affirm my negative core beliefs, true or not. But then at the bonfire, I guess I really became conscious of this idea that I don't hate him, And I know, again, I never was thinking, oh, I hate him so much or anything like that. But, yeah, it was more focused on him in a direct way, as opposed to using him as a ploy to attack myself. Even though, again, he definitely, gave me reasons to do that. It wasn't like I was drawing at straws, at least not all the time. But, yeah, during the bonfire, I was looking at that Polaroid of him and that drawing of him, and I was just like, it's so easy for people who know about this situation, but who obviously weren't in it, to say, fuck him, you got this, girl, yas, queen, get rid of him, good riddance, stupid exes. It's just, I hate even calling people my ex, because then, there's also this association with, oh, so whiny about your ex, you talk about your ex all the time. But it's like, I talk about my past all the time. And yeah, I mean, my relationships are pretty significant parts of my past, because I don't just get into a relationship to get into one. I mean, and this applies both romantically and friendship-wise. So yeah, I do talk about it a lot. But yeah, it's always so easy for people on the outside to diss your ex from an armchair and to see them as nothing but toxic. And then sometimes insult to injury, them being like, wow, you have poor taste in, exes, in your people, those people who are now your exes. It's frustrating. I'm not one of those people where, I have to choose between the nice guy and this badass but edgy and toxic motorcycle, leather-wearing dude. It's not like I go for that specifically. I'm like, oh, this person's so bad, I want it, I want them so much. I guess the one thing I have, the one kind of vice I have with that in being attracted to bad qualities, is I do tend to enjoy people who are more emotionally detached than I am, I guess. But this is all to say that, when I got into this relationship with my ex, my now ex, I mean, I didn't, first off, we fell into it. It wasn't just a matter of me thinking he was hot or anything, because I don't really think of people in general as hot, but he was so good to me at the beginning, and I feel like the reason why he stopped being good to me was my mental illness taking over, and so it was very easy for me to blame myself, because it's like, oh, as soon as I'm not sick, then he'll treat me better, and everything will go back to normal, and it's my responsibility. I'm the only person who can change this. And he has no flaws, and his reactions are always valid and justified, and I'm always crazy and invalid. But none of it was like that at the very beginning. I really felt this strong affection from him. He just would spoil me with all sorts of love of many different forms. And I was just looking at that Polaroid of him, of us, and I just thought, I could never hate this person, but I'm so pissed at him at the same time. It's such a weird conflict. It's such a hard balancing act because on one hand, it's, hating or disliking or being pissed at. It's obviously not a good thing to hold on to long term. It could definitely lead to heart problems, but it's almost something to mediate your love, because if you go too hard on fixating on your love for them, then it's pretty easy to fall back into it, to get caught up in this sort of idealized version of the life you could have with them. You need that anger to some extent in order to take off those rose-colored glasses, as they say. And so I feel like for the most part, I had kind of been focusing on my anger and, still a lot of the shame and the sadness I felt as a result of the stuff he did, but still recognizing for the most part that he did do a lot of those things. He did instill a lot of those negative feelings into me and reinforce those negative core beliefs. But yeah, in that moment with the bonfire, I just felt a lot of love in that, weirdly enough. Like, again, I looked at that picture of us, and I remember when I was in treatment, and at the dinner table, like, I had this little shrine of people who I care about, because it's like, those are the people I'm growing for, the people I'm trying to recover for. They're motivating me. I had a lot of pictures of my ex, and then someone sitting next to me at the dinner table was just like, I love those pictures of you and him, like, especially in one of those, and she pointed to the one, that was the one I burned tonight. She's like, especially in that one, you can just see, like, I can see on your face that genuine love you have for him. And it was just so overwhelming to see it turn into ash, just sort of turn into char, turn into something that's just such a basic element that has no real substance in itself. Like, it'll just blow off into the wind, or just become one with the ground, one with the sand, and that's that. It's so weird to see something so meaningful turn into something so neutral and meaningless in a sense. It was sort of hard for me in a sense to not feel guilty about it, because I don't want to think of it as me getting rid of him or trying to shove him away. It's just, I guess, something that I needed to do to move on. Because I just, it's not that everything's perfect and I don't feel any pain now, but it was definitely powerful and symbolic. And it was interesting too, because in those moments when I was talking, part of me really wanted to, like, record what I was saying in some ways, preferably via audio, and just send it to him, because, like, in my last video I was really bothered by, and I still am bothered to an extent, but I was bothered by this idea that, he's not grieving it at all, because he was cracking jokes during our last conversation, really not seeming to take it seriously, and that he was just gonna move on really fast, and I was gonna be left with that cross to bear, because, he was leaving my life. He was going to move on with his life without me, never really knowing what he did, how I felt, the impact, the significance. And yeah, that was really bothering me, that he's just gonna go through life completely guilt-free. But in that moment, I really wanted to forgive him, and I just wanted him to know that I don't hate him, Like, I wanted him to know that I love him, even still. But I knew that even if I did record that conversation, similar to, me trying to show him that, he did some bad things in the relationship too, it wouldn't necessarily hit deep for him. There's no way he's ever gonna know how much I loved him and how much I still do. And that's part of the reason that he has so much of an impact on me. Because his words, what he did for me, really mattered. The fact that he specifically cared about me, even though sometimes he just feels like he's a loser or a nobody. He was never that to me, I loved him a lot. And yeah, I loved him in spite of some things, but I loved him because of a lot of things too. And he's just never gonna see that complex illustration of my feelings. And for some reason that almost makes me feel more sad than how I was mainly feeling before with the self-degradation, and me feeling like everything was my fault. Shame is a very powerful thing, but I think this powerlessness that I have with me not being able to ever make him understand, either because he doesn't want to, as in the case of when I try to explain what he did wrong, or if it's just impossible, because he's not inside my head with how much I loved him, or he just, doesn't believe me or thinks I'm BSing. Either way, like, he's gonna go throughout the rest of his life not knowing. That really makes my heart ache, it really hurts. And I guess, like, in that sense, it's kind of unconditional love, like, even though, like, he just murdered my self-confidence, I don't want bad things for him, and that's a lot of what I said at the bonfire. Like, he's not a bad person. Like, he was a total sweetheart for a lot of it. And I miss that, and it's gonna be hard to move on from that. But, I mean, I have to. I really have to. He wanted to be friends, to be very casual friends who just share music and maybe go out to eat once or twice every so often, once in a blue moon, and enjoy the simple things, as he said. But he just means too much to me to be someone I just randomly share hobbies with, And it hurts to know that he has better people in his life now than me. Not another partner or anything, but another friend. Especially since he doesn't make friends easily. So I was really heartbroken throughout the process of our relationship, throughout its deterioration, when I realized that I wasn't really being his friend anymore, that he wasn't seeing me as a friend anymore, as someone he could confide in, that I was more so someone he felt like he had to hide things from, or to not reveal everything because, because he was scared of my responses, my reactions. It just breaks my heart that he likely felt very alone during the relationship. And, I mean, yeah, even when I say things like that, there's definitely an element of self-degradation and fuck, how could you do that to someone? But, like, right now, there's mainly an element of, like, that must have been really hard. Like, if I were in his shoes, I would feel very lost and powerless and desperate as well. And just wanting to escape the situation, but not knowing what to do. And wishing that my actions had more impact. Just like I do now, but, in a different way. It's not the most analogous. And, I'm not inside his head, so just like he's not inside mine, so it's not like I'm pretending that I'm completely understanding it now, but, I just wish he knew that I'm trying, that I don't just want to beat him up. And that, you know, when I do try to emphasize what he's done, I'm really not trying to do it to, like, puff my own ego up. You know, I just feel desperate. I feel, like, crazy. I feel like I'm lying to myself by saying that he has some part in it. Because I just felt like he was so perfect the whole time. Until, like, when I became very conscious that the dynamic was not working. So I just wish he knew that maybe I don't fully understand. I mean, almost guaranteed I don't fully understand. But that I'm really trying to. And that's not just because of me just trying to stick to some sort of arbitrary intellectual integrity, but because I really care about him. I want to know how he feels, and I do feel like, you know, probably because of my mental illness, among other things, like, my feelings were always at the forefront, and he mentioned that he feels like he's not allowed to have feelings anymore, and that's part of why he became apathetic. And it all makes sense. I guess just tonight I was really reminded of that. But, you know, it's just interesting too, because even though I was feeling a lot of empathy for him and a lot of sadness, a lot of almost grief, vicarious grief, when I was thinking about what he went through, it didn't really make me want to develop a friendship with him or anything. It didn't really change that. But I guess I did crave a sense of closure directly with him by things like me recording myself saying that stuff. But words have so little impact, especially now. I don't know. I just hope he gets better. I hope that he has some peace from it eventually and some perspective. I just don't want to feel like I ruined everything for him. I don't know if he actually is in a healthy place or not. My guess is not, because that's not something that you move on from super fast. Could be wrong though. I mean, he definitely played it off well as like a whatever type deal when we were talking last, but if he hasn't moved on, I hope he does. There are so many things in this situation that I can't control that I wish I could, and I think part of the forgiveness is the acceptance that I can't change anything anymore, and that, you know, I can't go back and change the past either. It's not like I was actively trying to fuck things up. I was doing the best I could with the resources I had, just like all of us are, but it didn't keep things going. The dynamic still unraveled. Like, I want to apologize to him, but it's not the main thing, you know? It's just, I just want to listen to him, you know? And I don't hate him. And I just hope he knows that someday, you know, somehow. Whether it's by sort of piecing it all together based on our interactions, maybe somehow, like, I'll find it in myself to want to interact with him. I'm not planning on it, but maybe we'll become friends somehow eventually. Forgiveness manifests in different ways, and it doesn't always automatically take form in being friends with someone, but I hope he somehow realizes that I always cared about him and that I still do, and that I'm trying really hard to forgive him, that I'm not just trying to blame him all the time to make myself feel better, and yeah, I mean, that I love him, and whether he finds that out through self-reflection, and again, like, future interactions with me, even though those aren't guaranteed, and again, I'm not planning on them. Or, I don't know, maybe he somehow finds these fucking video diaries. But I just hope he figures it out someday. Because I don't think I can do anything right now to help him figure that out. But yeah, I mean, in summary, the bonfire was very powerful, and I'm so happy. Like, everything was just so perfect about it. I think it played out exactly how it was meant to. I wouldn't change the way anything went down. Everything was just perfect. It aligned perfectly. So yeah, I could continue with this, but I feel like a lot of my videos is me saying the same thing, but like 100 different ways, even in just one video. And that's just kind of how I am, though. And I mean, it can be kind of a pain in the ass, probably, for other people to listen to, for other people to watch, but luckily these diaries are mainly for me, so I'm content with it. I am who I am. I deal with it. I deal with myself. Kind of have to, you know. But yeah, I will stop here and we'll make another update video at some point. Hopefully my life calms down a tiny bit after this, you know. So yeah, I will see y'all later. Goodbye.